class. Do ability underscore projectile. Again, right click on ability, create child blueprint, ability underscore AOE aerial effect. Right click on ability again, this one's ability buff, giving yourself a spell to improve your stats. And the last one you need is ability debuff, giving a spell on the enemy that damages over the turn or makes them weaker. Now because these are children, they also have access to that ability details. For example, going to projectile, you can find in the right hand side default settings details we can type in there. But we aren't done yet. What I want to do is I want to make a test ability that I can insert into my action slots. So I'm going to right click on the ability projectile and create a child blueprint of that. And this is how we go about creating abilities later on when we've got the whole system set up. So I'm going to go ability underscore fireball. And I'm going to make a new folder to store projectiles. Back that in there, keeping it organised as I go. Now this fireball we can open up, and I'm going to set the default settings for this. So I'm going to call this one fireball. Description, launch a flaming ball of hot lava towards your enemy. The cost of this is going to be a percentage of your mana. Now to do a percentage, you just do a fraction. So I'm going to do 0.1. Okay, so it's a tenth of your mana that's going to be used. The cooldown for this is going to be 3 seconds. The cast time for this is going to be 3 seconds. Actually, make the cooldown 5 seconds, make it a little bit longer. So 5-second cooldown with 3-second cast time. We'll make it interruptible, and it also requires a target for launching ball towards the enemy. And the icon, we can choose from that icon list that I've imported in. If you have not imported in the resources I've provided, you can find the link in the description below. When we're done there, hit compile. So now that's set up, how can we assign it to our abilities? Well, if we go into our ability system UI folder and go into action bar UI, open up the action bar slot UI. So this is the individual slot that appears on the action bar. We're going to go to the graph and we're going to add a new variable to this. New variable, ability class. And this is going to be the variable type of ability. However, you want to hover over it, move it across and choose class reference. Make sure you tick instance editable and expose and spawn. Hit compile. Now we're going to use the details associated with that ability class to build the icon into our UI here. So let's rename a few things that will be changing on this thing over time. Firstly, we've got the progress bar be named cooldown bar. The image is going to be icon image. The button is going to be ability. No, we call it cast button. The way I work is I typically put the name and then immediately after that the type of asset it is in the beginning of widget. So it's a cast button, icon, image, cooldown, bar, so on and so forth. And these are the only few things that are going to change on this thing. So we're going to my graph, and we now need to make it so we're pulling out the details from that ability class and assigning it to our icon image in this case. So we're going to use the pre-construct for this. The pre-construct allows you to build your widget before it is constructed into the game, which means that you can actually see your results as you're editing it. It makes sense in a second. So on your pre-construct, we're going to drag our ability class out and choose get. We're going to right click on it and choose convert to validate get. Now the reason why we convert it to validate get is because we need to check whether or not we actually have an ability assigned to this slot. If we don't, we're going to make it blank. So first thing we need to do is determine what to do with the image, if it's valid or not valid. So drag icon image out, choose get, and we're going to set it visibility.
Hello.
Or when we're not valid. So the ability class is not valid. We're going to change visibility of this to hidden.
Yay.
Let's drag that.
Oh, double the raids.
Next, we're going to do set visibility.
That's cool.
For the top, when it is valid.
I've been working on Unreal all day. Pretty much. I played a little bit of Pal World.
Next, we need to make it so that it changes the actual image. So with the ability class here, drag this down and type in get class defaults. And that'll get you all the settings that we've associated to that class, including the details. Right click on the detail struct and split the struct pin. Now we have access to all the values related to that ability, including the ability details icon. So I'm going to drag my icon image out, get, and what we're going to do is we're going to drag from the icon image and set brush from texture. This is going to belong to the is valid branch. And the texture is going to come all the way down to our icon. Click compile, and we're done for this. Now one thing we made an error in, or I made an error in, is that on our cooldown bar, I forgot to change its background fill. So when you go to the right hand side, we need to choose the cooldown bar, go to style, and you'll see background image. You want to change that to border, or actually to none rather. Make sure you clear the background so you can't see nothing. Okay. So when I compile that and go back to my action bar, I can select the first one and change its ability fireball. And you can see there it's changed the icon to represent the fireball. Hit compile and go back to your game. And there we have our fireball there loaded. And you can see the cooldown bar by default is set to whatever value that is. So you can see it halfway down the image there. Okay. Now click on it does nothing yet, but we'll be working on that in due course. First we're going to set up is our cast bar, and then get it so when we click on it.
Mabinagi was a free-to-play game.
Begin casting.
And they're making it in Unreal. Here, I'll show you. So it's kind of like a race. I'm racing them. I'm racing them. Maybe you'll recognize the icons. I used to play Mobby religiously, and I got kind of, I don't know, disheartened because of how the game makes its money. So I'm kind of like, I'll make it myself, and I'll make it better, and then undo their success.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 3 in our Ability System series. This episode, we're going to cover how to do the cast bar. So then we click or activate an ability to display a casting bar for the player to cast their spell. So to begin with, we're going to start off with the user interface element of the cast bar. I'm going to go in my URL folder, and I'm going to add a cast bar widget to this. I'm going to make a new user interface widget blueprint, and of course one cast bar _UI. We'll open this up, and inside here we'll be adding our progress bar along with some other features to it. So I'm going to get rid of the canvas panel and replace it with a size box, and I'm going to tell the size box to override the width by 800. I'll change this from fill screen to desired so I can see what's going on. Next, inside here we're going to do an overlay, and inside this overlay we're going to have a progress bar alongside some text. Like so. So my progress bar, I'm going to tell it to fill horizontally and vertically. It covers the whole width of the overlay. And with my text block, I'm going to do exactly the same, but this time I'm going to scroll down to justification and center it into the middle of its box. So now my progress bar, if I change the percent of this, you can see that's what it's going to look like. Okay. And we can choose what colour we're going to use as well. I'm going to change the colour to be a sort of green colour, like so. Drag it to the top, save it for later use. So this text block is going to be the name of the spell, so I'm going to change the name of this one up top here to ability name text, and tick the is variable box because it will be changing, and the progress bar, it will also be changing, so we need to make sure we change the name of this one to make it a bit easier to see. Cast bar, leave this cast bar, and it should be already ticked as is variable. And lastly, we just need to tick the size box for this thing and change the overall name for this thing as cast bar root. We'll call it that. Okay, and tick is variable. Okay, so now we've got that, we're going to go into our graph and we're going to add a new variable. And we're going to add the variable ability, and the type of this is going to be ability, and it's going to be object type, object reference. So when we're casting this, we're actually passing through to it an instance of an ability that's been spawned to the world, and then we can use that ability's details to customize the name and the cast timer for this spell. So this thing requires a couple of functions. So in your functions on the left hand side, click new function and do start cast. We also need another function saying completed cast, and another one saying interrupted cast. So the first thing we do is going to look at our start cast function. In our start cast function, we're going to get our ability and choose get, and then from there we want to get the ability details. Right click on this and split it to see the contents of that structure. Now, as we said before, we can use the ability name text variable now. Just get, and we're going to set it to say some text first. So set text. And in text for this, we're going to go into a format text node, and my format text node is going to say, I'm going to type in casting with capital C, casting, curly brackets, name, close curly brackets. Now I add a parameter to our format text box, which I can plug in my ability name into that. So that'll set that. Next, I'm going to set the cast bar itself set percent to be 0, so make sure it starts at 0%. And then we're going to start a timer. And we're going to set timer by function name. We're going to say the function name is going to be completed cast. So after a certain amount of time, it's going to call this function, and the time is going to come from our cast timer from the ability details here. We're going to drag that across the time there. Now I need this timer, so we can animate the percent bar. I'm going to drag this out and promote that to a variable. I'm going to call this cast timer. Hit compile. Now we will be returning to this in a moment, but for now let's move on. So as I said, we're going to use this cast timer to animate the progress bar so I can see it growing over time. So I'm going to go into my event graph, and we're going to use the tick event to control this. Now the reason why we're using tick is because we need to constantly update the progress bar on its length. So drag out your cast timer and choose get. Now from this we need to work out the percentage that the time has elapsed. So we're going to go and get timer elapsed, get timer remaining. Now to work out this into percentage, we need to add these two together. And this will get us the amount of time that we've passed so far, how much time we've got left, and it together gives us the total time that we have. And we're then going to do a normalized to range. Like so. This total won't go into value, it will go instead to range max. That is the maximum amount of time that this percentage could last. The value though will be the elapsed time. So now this normalized to range, what it'll do is it'll take the range of values between 0 and the max amount of time and convert the current value to a normalized value, being the value between 0 and 1, which we can then use to set the percentage on our cast bar. We get cast bar, set percent, and do that as in percent there. Now rather than just plugging the ticket like so, we don't want to do this we only want to do this if the cast bar is actually visible and being used. So what we're going to do is from there we're going to go is visible, and it's visible, and put that into a branch, and that way it will only do it if this current widget is visible. If it isn't, then it won't, saving us a bit of compute time and calculations on the optimization. Okay, so now we're done with this, we can close this, and we're going to get ready to add this to our action bar. So, or our HUD rather. So let's go into our heads-up display, and let's add our cast bar to our scene here. So cast bar, drag it to the canvas panel, and we want to size the content. Now I want to position this to be in the center at the bottom, and I'm going to reposition it at 0, 0. Alignment is going to be 0.5 in the X, and Y doesn't really matter too much, but I will just put it 1, and my position in the Y is going to decrease, be above the action bar, like so. So let's go minus 325, like so, and that's not too bad. Compile, and we are done there. So part of this HUD is going to be a new function for this cast bar. So new graph, add new function, and this is going to be display cast bar. And this function is going to take one input, and that's going to be the ability we're casting. So ability to cast, and its type is going to be ability object reference. So on display cast bar, we're going to drag the cast bar UI out, get, and we're going to tell this thing to set its visibility to be visible, and then we're going to tell its ability, set ability to be equal to our ability to cast here. So we're changing its visibility to be visible, and then we're telling its ability is the ability we told it to cast here, and then finally we're going to tell it to start the cast. So drag from there again and start cast. Compile. Back on designer view, we want to make the default value for our cast bar to be invisible or hidden. So find where it says visibility and change that to hidden. Compile. So when you play the game, you shouldn't see the cast bar. Like so. Okay? So next trick is to make it so that when we click on this button, it communicates to the HUD to tell it to display that cast bar. So the way this works is we need to go onto the ability actor itself. So let's go to the ability parent actor, and we're going to make the new function for this. We're going to do this one called begin casting. Okay, now begin casting is going to be the function that plays as soon as this thing has been spawned. Once it's been spawned into the world, it will check whether or not it needs to be casted. If it does need to be casted, then we'll tell it the heads up display to display the cast bar. But drag your ability details out, split this, and you want to look at the cast time. The cast time is greater than 0.
Hey.
To go to a branch. If the cast time is greater than 0, we're going to tell it to access the HUD and turn on the cast bar. This false will tell it just to cast the spell without casting it. So what we'll need to do is get a reference to the HUD. So on the event graph, we're going to do the begin play. Let's delete these part 2. So at the start of an ability's life, it's going to get the game mode, cast to the third person game mode in this case, get the heads up display reference, and we're going to promote that to a local variable here. Well, not local, but a variable on this ability, sorry. So we go HUD underscore UI. Put that in. Okay, so now we've got a reference to the HUD user interface on the ability. So on that begin casting, we can drag that HUD UI out and tell it to display cast bar. Now, it'll ask for an ability to cast. In this case, it's itself, so ability to cast becomes self. And then after that, we want to be able to communicate between the cast bar being successful and then this ability doing something in response to that. So on display cast bar, we need an output here to determine when to bind an event to its cast successful. So I'm going to go onto that cast bar in the UI here, and we're going to go to its graph and add an event dispatcher and call this one cast successful. Hit compile and go to a completed cast function. Remember, this function is being called when that timer on our start cast has ended. Okay, so when it's ended, we're going to tell it to, we're going to drag that out, call cast successful. So it's basically just going to shout out that it's successful to anything that's listening. What to do then is tell the ability to listen out for that cast success. So display cast bar.
Yeah, I've been working all day on it. Here, let me show you what it does. So what took me all day, I didn't want to put, when I click on a person, I wanted to activate the effect. So it took me all day to figure out how to make it so that I can walk without clicking the person. So that's what I did all day, and now I'm working on this part. So yeah. But yeah, we want the Mavi update.
The function in header display, we want one output on this.
I'm going to erase them, Ursty.
So click on the function, new output, and then the output here would be the cast bar reference, and the type for this would be a cast bar UI object reference. Okay. And we can drag cast bar UI out and connect it to the cast bar there. Compile. Go back to mobility. You should now see cast bar is an output of my display cast bar, which means I now have access to that event dispatcher that was set up earlier. So here I can bind event to cast successful. So when this thing hears cast successful, it's going to do something, this event here. Now the event is going to cast to, event is going to bind to, this can be a new function. So create a new function, and we'll call this one cast ability. On begin casting, we now need to hook that cast ability to this event and to false. False is easy enough, we just drag cast ability out and plug it into false. But for bind event, we need to type in the word event to create event, and we're going to select the cast ability function from the drop down. Hit compile, and that will now call that cast ability event when it hears that cast is successful. Hit save, and we are done there. So that's all set up. But what we need to actually do is make sure when we click on that button, it actually does this thing here. Okay? So begin casting will only happen at the start, when it's very much spawned into the world, which happens on begin play. So let's drag begin casting to the end of begin play. Next, we need to tell this ability to spawn when we click on that button. So let's go into our action bar slots.
Yeah, and I would always be an advocate for increasing the drop rate. I think that I would rather it be really hard enemies but guaranteed drops than the way it is now, which is like easy enemies, impossible drop rates.
UI, which happens on begin play. So let's drag begin casting to the end of
I can't even do text. Like I can't do any of it alone. So it's all broken. I've been playing the game since it came out and I still can't do any fucking damage. And I've been unlucky in my rolls, which is like reforging rolls. Just like I have to wait for reforges. No, I'm gonna do this instead and then replace you. Why? Yeah. Doesn't matter, I'm gonna remake Mavi. Then I don't have to worry about it.
Begin play. Next, we need to tell this ability to spawn when we click on that button. So let's go into our action bar slots UI, click on the graph, and we want to click on our cast button in the variable list and choose the on-clicked event in the details panel below. So when this cast button is selected, we want to tell it to spawn in an actor of this ability class. So spawn actor from class and drag your ability class to it. Now the spawn transform is going to come from the player that's casting it. So in this case it's the player character. We're going to get player character, and then from there get actor transform. Hit compile. So click on that button will now spawn this actor. The actor, when spawned, will will trigger the begin play, which will then trigger the begin casting. Begin casting will see that it needs to cast timer, which will then trigger the display cast bar function in the heads up display, which is then triggering visibility of the cast bar and its timer. When that timer succeeds, this cast ability will happen. Now to test this out, we're going to go into cast ability and just do a print string in here to say hello when it's been casted successfully. Let's test this out. Apologies, we forgot one thing. Well, I forgot one thing. Go into your action bar slot UI, click on the cooldown bar, and we need to tell this thing not to be interactable. So when it says visibility, change that to non-hit testable self only. This means that the mouse will click through it, so ignoring the cast bar. So therefore the button will receive the hit, not anything else. But then I can hit play, button, and there's my casting fireball. It's the end. It says hello. All we need now to do is tell the cast bar to disappear when it's done. So let's go to our cast bar, which graph, and completed cast. It's not just going to call the cast successful, but it's also going to do the visibility of this widget. Set visibility and change it to hidden. Test this out now. Button. Hello. Button again. There we go. So what that'll do for this episode. In the next episode, we're going to go through the process of adding an interruptible spell to our system. So then when I click the button and then move, it'll interrupt the spell. Or if I click another spell, it'll also interrupt the spell and move on. If you want to see the next part right now, you can head over to patreon.com/RyanLaley. Or, so that when we clicked on a spell in the action bar, it displayed the cast bar for that spell and then triggered the spell effect. Okay. So what we'll be doing in this episode
that's
is
true.
showing how moving the character
Join the guild
interrupts
Discord.
cast of that spell. And likewise, you can also
We're a
apply
guild
to
now.
any abilities the enemies have that may interrupt you, or anything else you want to interrupt the
Let's
player
go
from
Vapor
casting,
Dreams.
maybe a cutscene or something. You want to interrupt any casting happening. Well, this will work for that too. So to start off with, we need to go to our player character and set up on here the ability for us to interrupt any sort of casting. So on a third-person character, on your event dispatchers, we're going to add a new event dispatcher, and we call this one interrupt cast. I'll do interrupt casting, and we're going to call this event dispatcher so that anything listening to it will then react accordingly. So first of all, let's set up when this thing is being called. So on the movement input, move forward and move right, you notice we have these axis values. Well, we can use these to determine whether or not we're actually pushing any keys. Now, to do that, rather than dragging a load of lines about, which we could do actually, we'll just go down here, we'll just use it like so. There's quite still some space there, so that's totally fine. And what we're doing here is going to go is not equal, and you're choosing not equal float. Okay? And likewise, this one, not equal float. So both of these have to be not equal to 0. So 0 means there's no input being entered, and it will either be 1 or -1 on a keyboard based on whether or not you're pushing one of W, A, S, and D keys. If you're doing this on a gamepad, please take note that you won't need to use these ones. Instead, you'll need to use the nearly equal here and turn this into a not gate. So you just not it at the end. So not, for example. So you'd need to use this for gamepad stuff, okay? Because you need to determine the tolerance for the thumbsticks, because there's always a little bit of give in the thumbsticks. So use that for gamepad stuff. But in this case, we're keeping it simple with just the keyboard input. So on here, either of these could be true for it to interrupt. So this will go into an OR gate. So OR Boolean, which means that either of these can be true for it to be output true, and that will go into a branch. Okay. Now, after the branch, we're going to drag our interrupt casting and choose call. And basically, the way the event dispatcher works is he shouts out, "Hey, I've interrupted my cast," and then anything we tell it to listen out for it will react however we decide to. So we're done here. We can close that, and now we're going to add the effects of that cast. So here I'm going to go into my cast bar, and on my cast bar here we can go to the graph, and we're going to first of all set up our player so we know we've got access to the player reference. So on here I'm going to go begin play, well not begin play, event construct, event construct, and on here we're going to get player character, and we're going to plug that into a cast to third person character. Now, because we have this as a reference, we may want to save this reference for later use. So as third person character, it's a good idea just to promote that to a variable, and we can store that as player character. It's always good to store any casts you do. It saves a lot of time later on. So with this player character, we can now find an event to interrupt casting. Okay, so what we're doing, as soon as this cast bar is created, we're telling it to prepare an event in case it hears the interrupt casting being shouted out. That's what essentially it's doing. So the event we want to trigger is one we set up in our last episode called interrupted cast. So from the event here, go create event, and from the drop down box, select function and select the interrupted cast here, and click compile.
It's not just that though. It's not just a buff set. There's also the power pot. You need a power pot, or you're not gonna like do any damage. It's bullshit. And you don't get to play the game if you like. How many passes I have just because I bought VIP is disgusting. You don't really get to play the game if you don't have VIP. So like you can't give me that shit. Like Malby's too much pay to win now. I don't like it. And I do debuff. I debuff all the time. Yeah, okay, sure you are. Like that's cool. It's just luck then, because you got your rolls on and everything. I don't believe that you're pay to win either, because how did you get Pallid and the other things so fast? And then it has the exact reforge you need on it already? Go fuck yourself. That's what's bullshit, is I can't get the reforge to do the thing, so it's not worth it. I don't have the reforges to do anything. It's bullshit. Enough. Doesn't matter.
On the interrupted cast function, this is when we're going to grab our ability, get ability, and we're going to tell this thing to also interrupt its cast. We need to give that though the function to interrupt. So go find your ability parent, and you want to make sure you add a new function called interrupt cast. So new function, interrupt cast. Back on your cast bar UI, you can now drag from the ability here and search for that interrupt cast function, like so. And what we're going to do here temporarily is just tell this thing to hide. So we're going to set visibility new function, interrupt cast. Back on your cast bar UI, you can now drag from the ability here and search for that interrupt cast function, like so. And what we're going to do here temporarily is just tell this thing to hide. So we're going to set visibility, this temporarily, to be hidden. Okay. Now, with that done, we can then go to the ability itself, and when it sees the interrupt cast, we're going to take it to just destroy itself. Destroy actor. Hit compile. So it removes the ability from the world, so it isn't actually flung out towards an enemy. So to test that this is working, on this ability here, I'm just going to do a print string, and we're going to do interrupt. hopefully you followed all that along. So now when I push play, start casting and move, I get the interrupt get called. And there you go. You see it disappears, like so. Now at the moment it's quite static. What would be quite nice is to add an animation, a bit of flair to the cast bar. So it sort of like shows the player like, by the way, bang, this was interrupted, you screwed up, try again later. So what I'm going to do is set up an animation on my cast bar. So you're going to load up your cast bar UI. Oh, pardon me. The access. That's because this ability does not exist anymore. So on the interrupted cast here, you just want to check that ability is valid. So right click on ability and convert to valid again. You can't obviously interrupt the cast of a spell that isn't actually there. Now that should stop that error. Right. Yeah, there you go. So as I said, we're going to do an animation on our cast bar. So open up your cast bar UI, and in here we're going to create a new animation. So click plus animation, and we'll call this one interrupted. Fast. Oh, let's do interrupted. Maybe something already. So, hi everyone, and welcome to another episode in our Ability System series.
Oh my god. I know how that works, Ursty. That's another reason why it's bullshit. Because they sell the enchant protection potion. Did you forget? You just buy the enchant protection potion. See what I mean? Do you get it? I'm sick of the pay to win. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy sucking after playing for the game for the whole fucking time. I'm gonna make my own, and if it's better, it's better. It'll be better for the reasons that I think it should. No, yeah, I know. That's the whole point. Oh my god. You have to buy the enchant potion so that when you burn it off, you don't lose your item. It has WASD and jumping. And I'm working on PvP first. So God, if I could have less than, but I can't even play my own fucking game. I'm going to bed.